Welcome, you're watching the India Development Debate. I'm Tamanna Inamdar. In what is being touted as a major diplomatic victory, Prime Minister Modi reiterated that the issue of Kashmir is a bilateral one between India and Pakistan, and he didn't want to trouble any third nation with mediation. The comment was a pointed answer to US President Donald Trump's offers to mediate between India and Pakistan on Kashmir, and was made sitting next to him at a press meet during the G7 summit in France. Here's how it all went down.
Mr. Modi, would you like to have President Trump be involved in negotiating between Pakistan and India?
भारत और पाकिस्तान के सारे इश्यूज बायलैटरल है और इसलिए हम दुनिया के किसी भी देश को इनके लिए कष्ट नहीं देते हैं और मुझे विश्वास है कि भारत और पाकिस्तान जो 1947 के पहले एक ही थे, हम मिलजुल करके हमारी समस्याओं पर चर्चा भी कर सकते हैं और समाधान भी कर सकते हैं।
Mr. President, can you clarify your position on whether you will mediate on Kashmir, please?
Well, we spoke last night about Kashmir, and the Prime Minister really feels he has it under control. I know they speak with Pakistan, and I'm sure that they will be able to do something that will be very good. We spoke about it last night at Korea.
So it was the third public comment US President Trump has made on Kashmir, but this time the tone was very different, and there seemed to be an acceptance that this was an issue that India and Pakistan would solve between them, which is India's stated position. Pakistan, on the other hand, has been keen to internationalize the issue and claims it has succeeded. The bonhomie between Modi and Trump was evident in that short briefing as well. Let me just show you those pictures of them, sort of hand slapping each other, and Modi showing his warmth there as far as Trump is concerned. So has India played its cards right vis-a-vis Kashmir on the international stage? With all this warmth between Modi and Trump, which is great when it comes to Kashmir, but will it translate to the sticky trade issues between the two nations? And is the really big question, and the most important one in fact, what happens to the trade war between US and China? To speak on all this and more, I'm joined now by Dr. Kanwal Sibal, former Foreign Secretary, Sushant Sareen, Strategic Affairs Analyst, Vishnu Prakash, former Ambassador to Canada and South Korea, Manoj Joshi, Distinguished Fellow at ORF, and Sanjay Polipaka, Senior Fellow at the Nehru Memorial Museum Library. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for joining us today. Let me start with you, Ambassador Prakash, by asking how you see it. Of course, the first spin, if I may say so, or the first comment is that this is a huge diplomatic victory for India, because sitting next to Donald Trump, Prime Minister Modi made it clear that thank you but no thank you. We don't want to trouble anyone with mediation. In Hindi, he says, "Hum kisi ko kasht nahi dena chahte hain." You think the message has gone down straight, and that's why we saw a more toned down version when Donald Trump answered that very question again?
Well, I would think it was a good conversation. As you mentioned, the body language was quite positive. I liked the banter. Certainly, they have a good relationship. I think that what it means is that we have taken care of the immediate bump or the hiccup, if you may. The difficulty is that with President Trump, nothing is consistent. The only consistency or constant is that nothing is constant. That is one. Secondly, I have been thinking about it. He has a tendency of creating a hype or saying difficult things, trying to throw the opposition off balance. And then when he meets, it's a different kind of a conversation. But it's also like last in, first out. I mean, whatever is the last conversation that takes place stays in his mind for some time, and then there's a change. Remember Osaka? Prime Minister and he had a very good conversation, and then he meets Imran Khan and it changes. So I don't think that we have heard the end of it. Perhaps it will resurface, but I'm very confident that given the strength of India's case and the importance of the India-US relationship, we'll be able to take care of these issues. I'm afraid this matter is not going to die out very soon, because Pakistan will do everything that it takes to keep it alive, with China as a willing ally.
That's a very interesting point. Sushant, what do you make on that? Ambassador Prakash says, Trump is last in, last out. If I may add, small attention span perhaps sometimes. So today he is sitting with Prime Minister Modi and completely muted. Tomorrow, if he meets Imran Khan, will he be different? Though I must say, if you compare the visuals of his body language with Imran Khan and Prime Minister Modi, there is a difference there. But do you think there's a point to what Ambassador Vishnu Prakash is saying?
Well, I think there is a point to what Ambassador Vishnu Prakash is saying, but I wouldn't go too far down that road. I think even if you look at what Trump has said in the past, his meeting with Imran Khan and the whole thing, the only time when he has really taken a shot at India has been on things like trade issues. Has been on issues regarding global economy, that why should India be treated as a developing country, and that is because I suspect that somebody is constantly drilling into him on issues of the economy. And I think that is something which if we can address rather than the kind of bureaucratic approach that we have followed, that no, if 500 Harley Davidsons come in, then we will impose so much of duty and stuff like that. If we kind of have a far more liberal approach to our trade relations with the US, I think many of these problems will automatically get sorted out. On the strategic angle, I think he has to balance a bit between the larger relationship with India and the more specific kind of a compulsion which the Americans have vis-a-vis Pakistan on Afghanistan. Even out there, I think we are seeing some shifts. Perhaps it's only nuance as of now, but even today or yesterday he has mentioned that I am not going to withdraw from Afghanistan in a rush. He has said that we are going to be out there for some time. He has made a number of other statements which aren't going to really cause comfort to the Taliban or some of the Taliban supporters, I mean the Pakistanis. So I think there is, look, he is nobody's fool. I think let's remember that. He might not use the same language as diplomats are used to for the last 500 years. He might have a completely different style of diplomacy. He has brought what a colleague of mine calls diplomacy, and he's made that into a new form of how to communicate with both his interlocutors as well as the public at large. But he is nobody's fool. So I think we need to be careful on the trade issues. If we can sort those out,
I want to come to the trade issues, Sushant. Allow me to come to the trade issues in a bit.
Other stuff, then I think Pakistan is a bit of a sideshow.
Let me come to the trade issues in a bit. And that's why I listed them out in the beginning of the show, that the trade issues are important. And you've in part answered my question that this bonhomie is great, but will it translate to trade issues? But I want to focus a bit on the issue of Kashmir, and let me come to Manoj Joshi on this, because understanding this narrative is very important. So now Pakistan has constantly claimed and has claimed later on as well that the issue is now internationalized. They have tried to do this again and again. We saw that with the closed door UNSC meet a few days ago. Have they succeeded or have they completely failed, Mr. Joshi? Now, some would argue the fact that Prime Minister Modi has to speak to Donald Trump about what's happening in Kashmir and tell him that everything's okay. And then Donald Trump comes and says, yes, he's told me that everything's okay. Is that a good thing for us or not?
Well, I think it's very clear, and Trump said it, that last night I had this conversation and Modi says everything is under control. Now, it is a fact that if you look at Kashmir, as of now, there is no large-scale public violence. There have been a couple of incidents which have been recorded, but the fact of the matter is that things are not normal. The state is in a lockdown. There is a huge military and police presence. Communications are kind of fitful out there. The other thing that is happening is that people are refusing to send their kids to school or step out into the streets. So you have a peculiar kind of a boycott happening, which makes the situation look abnormal. Now, if this continues like this, there is no law and order problem as such. So Mr. Modi can tell the American president, I have things under control.
Yeah.
But I'm not so sure about the future. If things deteriorate, then that gives an opportunity to the Americans to get back into the issue.
Yeah.
And I think, there's that statement, that sentence where Modi says, I think that these guys can do it between themselves, Khan and Modi, but otherwise I'm here.
Yeah.
So he says, I'm here. And so I think we should not
but look at what the question was.
And I still think that it depends on the ground situation in Kashmir.
Yeah. No, I made it a point to listen to that whole clip a couple of times. So the question was that, do you still want to mediate? So he says, I'm here, but these guys can really handle it. In fact, if I have that clip ready, I'll play it out for you, because I think it's important to understand the perspective from how he was speaking about the same issue before. It's unlikely that Donald Trump is suddenly going to say, no, I'm absolutely, let them do whatever they want. I mean, he's still going to want to position himself as the big guy, so to speak. So, we'll try and play that for you in a bit, but I want to get Kanwal Sibbal's point of view. Mr. Joshi made an important point that right now, Donald Trump, and we've spoken to Macron about this as well, is and even in the UNSC, in fact, is taking on board India's point of view that everything is under control in Kashmir and, we have done the right thing. My question is different. Do we really want to be in a position to explain to anyone else in the world what's happening inside our own sovereign territory? That itself should be bothersome, isn't it, Mr. Sibbal?
Well, before I answer your question, I don't feel comfortable at the idea that the President of the United States, or for that matter, any other country, should be given so much importance that every word he utters then should be passed by us as to what it means, and that every word said and not said affects our diplomatic options this way or that way. I mean, we should learn to think and act like a big power, a country which will have control over its foreign policy and its domestic policies, and will pursue its interests as other countries do. United States is pursuing its interests very vigorously, very violently in various parts of the world. And we are here dealing with an issue of great problem, of great importance, which has troubled us for the last 70 years on account of the acts of our neighbor, especially in terms of promotion of terrorism, including physical aggression, Islamization, and everything else. So we have to look at our interests and deal with them. It's unfortunate that the American president got into this game for whatever reason, whether he wanted to satisfy Pakistan, be a little responsive to Pakistan or Afghanistan, but whatever the reason, I think he waded into an area in which the Americans should not have waded, because this is a very core issue for India. Our position is very clear that this has to be resolved bilaterally with Pakistan, and Pakistan agreed to it under the Simla Agreement. We have said that the UN has no role and third parties have no role. Now, that doesn't stop the American president, or for that matter anybody else, to talk to us in private. They can raise this issue, we can address this issue to them, address this issue and try and satisfy them and develop a better understanding of the issue that they have.
Okay.
But publicly for him to have tweeted and said that he will mediate and this and that was totally uncalled for. So I'm happy that at this stage he has withdrawn from that position, and our Prime Minister has handled him very well indeed, and with great confidence. Because in front of him, he sent him a polite but very firm message that we don't want to trouble any third country to intercede in the Kashmir issue. And for the moment, Trump has accepted that position, but all now will depend on how the situation unfolds. But even if there is violence on the streets and we have to curb it, and there are some casualties, why are we afraid of this? Why are we afraid of this? We've gone through extremely difficult times in the 90s and the early 2000s, when we've had tremendous terrorist attacks. A lot of people have been killed. There have been curfews imposed in the valley. Human rights organizations have been at our back. But we are not going to determine our policies and our future interests because of what the other countries think
Which was
about
exactly
it. But
my
we have to be
question.
extremely focused
Which was
on our
exactly
interests.
my
We have
question,
work
Mr.
ahead of
Sibal.
us, and I do hope that the Americans will not wade into this issue.
Yeah,
Sorry?
but sir, that
Say
was
that
my
again?
question. That was my question. They have waded into the issue, and we have rebuffed them artfully at this point. But it's not just the Americans.
But that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Let them wait.
Yeah. Is it?
Let them wait. Let them make pronouncement on this issue. It's all right. We can live with it, and we can pursue our own policy. After all, we don't agree with the Americans on so many things, and the Americans don't necessarily agree with us on some things. So it's all right. The differences will remain, and we will stand firm on the nuclear issue. We stood firm, didn't we? We have developed our missile capability. We have developed our deterrence capabilities,
Sure.
which America was opposing at one time. But America will have to see reality. But what I'm saying is that we should have a diplomatic engagement. We should tell the Americans what is happening in private when they raise the issue with us without seeking mediation, so that they do not make a mistake and bring harm to the excellent relations that we are developing, a relationship of trust where we want more American involvement in terms of investment and
Sure.
everything else.
Let me
and
yes.
that process should not be interrupted or affected by missteps by United States.
Okay, so which may be some of the reasons that Trump sort of walked back from his earlier position. I'm going to come to Sanjay Pulipaka, and just on the other part, for the last decade or so, and especially in the last 5 years, India has been very keen to de-hyphenate itself from Pakistan when it comes to America. We don't think we're in the same boat at all. So today, even as Trump walks back and sort of softens his line on mediation, he is still saying in the next sentence that both are my very good friends. Now, that's not necessarily the best situation for us, is it? Because we don't consider ourselves in the same boat or on the same level as Pakistan.
So there are a couple of things here. One, today the press conference went off really well from an Indian perspective. The second point is the government of India has been consistently saying that we have not sought mediation from the United States, and today Prime Minister clearly stated that. Third, the President of United States actually changed his position a bit by saying that yes, I'm here, but these two guys can resolve whatever issues that may crop up. So in that sense, what has been validated today is the government stance in past few weeks, where we have been saying that we have not sought for the mediation. That's something which is very important to be noted. The other point that needs to be noted here, in my opinion, is just because we have a conversation with another power on various issues, that does not mean that we are trying to internationalize this issue. Having a conversation on any regional security issue does not necessarily mean that we are trying to internationalize, and that needs to be kept in mind. And then the other important point that we need to keep in mind is that the United States proclivity to constantly say that we would like to mediate is not something new. It has been going on for quite some time.
That's
if you
very
remember,
true.
President Obama, even during his campaign days, was talking about possibility of mediating between India and Pakistan before his first term, during when he was campaigning. And when he became president, there was all this talk about US Special Envoy for India and Pakistan. That did not happen. Instead, on the other hand, what we have seen is that the US Special Envoy for Pakistan and Afghanistan has been created. So there is always this tendency among the US presidents for a while to hope for some mediation role in Kashmir, which will generally never fructify, because India does not prefer to have mediation. If one of the parties to a dispute or an issue would not like to have a mediation, then mediation will not move forward.
No, clearly
So
mediation.
that's in my opinion, some of the important points or important important points to take away. On your question whether
We'll
we
come to it.
have
We'll come to it
back
bit by
into
bit.
hyphenation with Pakistan.
Yes, we'll come to it bit by bit, because I want everyone to, participate in this debate. And yes, Mr. Dua, I've kept you waiting. I apologize for that. But I'm coming to you, of course, with your first comments on what we saw in the press conference today, and also the very important second question which I placed in this show, that will this bonhomie extend to trade as well? Because that's where we really have to sort out a lot of issues with Donald Trump, isn't it?
That's true. So that's very true, Tamanna. We should be concerned about that. Now that Mr. Modi has cleared the air with the president that he probably never had requested him to mediate, the way President Trump seems to have understood their last conversation, and about which he even mentioned to Prime Minister Imran Khan on the 22nd of July and himself talked about it on the 1st of August. There probably was a misunderstanding in understanding of what Prime Minister Modi was talking about. Jokingly, in a lighter vein, I think he talked about meditation, and when he asked him what or where, he said in Kashmir, a beautiful place, which the President of the United States understood as Prime Minister Modi conceding what probably the US had, as we just discussed, had wanted to do for a long time, to mediate in the dispute between India and Pakistan. That apart, I think the biggest achievement was that it's been cleared. There is absolutely no doubt that India does not want the United States to intervene in what it has invariably treated as a bilateral victory. Having said that, or a bilateral matter, I think that was a great victory. And I would say in this particular trip of Prime Minister Modi, he has been able to put across this point of view, obviously in the UAE as well as Bahrain, a Muslim world which Pakistan had treated as if it was entirely with it, and then now having got this assurance from the President, it is something which we have to be happy about. Having said that, now talking about trade, I think the issue of trade is not really a very major issue, considering that the level of trade between India and the US is not as high as, say, as we have with China or with EU as a bloc, but it is certainly one where we have an advantage in terms of a trade surplus, something which President of the United States, in order to promote his, America first, like we want to promote India first, or the manufacturing drive, make in India campaign, tried to do that for his own constituents. And first act, and I think the one which he's only acted upon so far, is levying the duty on aluminium and steel. Yes, but what is the level of trade on all that? Not too much, and we have responded by levying a higher duty on a lot of other products which we import from the US. So that's in some ways leveled off. The rest, I think the President is fond of saying that, fond of referring to Harley Davidsons, which not even 700 came last year. And if the duty is 50%,
but let me point out issues like data localization. Let me point out issues like data localization, which are tricky points, which are red lines for India. We're not going to compromise on that. It's a big problem for American companies. So it's not just 700 odd motorcycles and some steel and aluminum tariffs.
We've said that very clearly. We've said that very clearly, that data localization is something which we consider as a serious matter, something which is related to both our commercial as well as the strategic defense of the country. So we are not going to compromise on that. They want to internationalize it. Certainly that is something which many of these countries, the Western world, wants to look at that in a different manner. We've said we will go along in the issue of e-commerce with what the world decides as a whole, not what is bilaterally decided or what the US needs vis-a-vis us. So we have made our position fairly clear, and I think the President of the United States has not succeeded in G7 in the meetings, at least from what's been reported upon as yesterday as well as today. Individually as well as collectively, he is being told by the other members that, look, we are for multilateral trade. I believe
Depends
Germany
on who you listen
has
to.
told
I want to
the
open up
German
this debate. I
Chancellor
want to open
has
up this
told
debate
him
and I want to
in as
request,
very-
yes sir, I want to open up this debate and I want to request all our participants who have great depth of knowledge to please keep their responses a little brief, so that viewers can get into it and we can have more views in. So with due respect, I request that of everyone. Yes, Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, you want to come in. If you listen to Trump, everything is superb. Everything is superb. All his tweets and press conferences say everything is superb. Here, Mr. Dua says that he's not really getting much bhav.
Tamanna, not superb, great.
Oh,
Superb has not yet entered his vocabulary. I'm sorry to say that.
My mistake.
Now, two brief points, and I promise to be brief. One about the hyphenation, and the second about trade. Now, about hyphenation, I don't think we should bother any more about it. It's not our perception of hyphenation or dehyphenation, but as the world sees it. And if I'm an outsider, I see India and Pakistan as IT powers. Now, the difference is that India is an information technology power and Pakistan is an international terrorism power. So that is the difference between India and Pakistan. We are as different as chalk and cheese on whether it's economy, whether it's a stature, whether it's a standing. I mean, where is the comparison? So I think we should now just leave this hyphenation bit. It's way beyond us. Pakistan is a failing state. It's a basket case. Second, as far as trade is concerned, I mean, we may like it, we may not like it. As far as I can see, that there is one thing that President Trump understands or believe he understands, and that is trade. Everything for him hinges on trade. I mean, security, long-term interest, nothing matters. So I guess tactically, if we give him some sweetener on trade, I think we will have a lot of pressure off us. And we keep on coming to this blessed Harley Davidson, etc. I mean, some sop here and there, let him declare victory, who cares? But he's a person who is transactional, and let us be tactical about it. That's all I wanted.
Yeah. Okay, good point there. I mean, we want to get people to buy our local vehicles. And then maybe the Harley Davidsons can wait. But let me just get Manoj Joshi's view in on the trade factors. And the consensus seems to be that the issues are not as big as they are made out. Where would you stand on that? Because right now Trump's stance, not just with India, I must say, that's generally his stance vis-a-vis trade is pretty, if I may say so, belligerent. Where it has to be a deal and it has to look like a deal that the US has quote unquote won. Now, how do we deal with that?
Well, the thing is that what we have seen is that trade is the issue that really moves Trump. Meaning, whether it's Kashmir, whether it is the Indo-Pacific, whether it's anything else, Trump says things, but he doesn't really get too involved in that. But when it comes to trade, we have tweets, we have complaints, we have all sorts of things happening. And now, of course, as has been pointed out, that the trade is not all that great, meaning it's not that so significant from the American point of view, it's not very significant. I think we have to adopt a strategy in which we play along to the extent we can. I would say when the government reduced the Harley-Davidson duties from 75% to 50%, that is a good idea. We should play along at a certain way. But beyond the point, I think we should also understand that we are on the cusp of opportunity. The opportunity is the China-US trade breakdown. Now, we have to see if we play along effectively, we may be able to seize opportunities out there.
Okay.
This is a very dynamic kind of a situation.
Yeah.
And I think there is no need for us to get into a kind of a straight, kind of one-to-one retaliation. I don't think that's a good idea in itself. I think we've got to think on a longer term beyond everything. And I think we should not have given that 29-item retaliation immediately. And maybe we could have played it a different way. Because we, as has been pointed out, we don't have that much of a clout in that trade area.
Okay.
We have a clout in the strategic area where the United States realizes that we do not have, that India is the only country in Asia which can provide some kind of a countervailing strength to China.
Yeah.
That's our real strength right now. It's not the economic part of it.
Ajay Dua is not seeming to agree. Mr. Dua, you want to come in on that point?
Yes, I think we need the United States for a host of things. One of it is certainly matters related to purchase of their allowing India to buy defense equipment, fighter aircrafts of the highest, what we call the 5th generation fighters. We need the United States for high technology which we need in defense, which we need in all other activities, including, I would say, in business. As the world moves forward in technology, we cannot be doing, or we are not in a position to resort to original research, original R&D. We need to be getting that from the advanced countries, and there the US stands foremost. We need that technology to come in along with investment. But even if investment doesn't come by itself or for any reason, we certainly need the United States government to allow us access to technology of the order which they possess.
Okay.
So I would say, if we have to compromise somewhere on trade, we should have leverage it with that look, the world's number one technological power is USA.
Yeah.
We need it for a host of issues, including defense, which is paramount, and that if we have lowered the duty from 100% to 50% for 700 mobiles, if we need to make it 5%,
yes,
or we need to make it 10%,
okay,
there is no harm whatsoever, except that it will happen. Some other mobiles of same capacity, Triumph from the UK might start coming, but considering their cost and the advantage which we have in the automobile industry, comparative advantage here, our mobiles will still sell.
Okay.
Having said that, I'll just make one other point. Let's understand that the US is important to us for the support which it has been extending to us in the last 5 years in the international arena, particularly in multilateral bodies like the UN Security Council, where it has of late even been able to persuade China to fall in line. Otherwise, on Kashmir, Pakistan expected a lot of issues, a lot of issues to be raised there.
That's true.
And that China will
the world's response to Kashmir,
on declaring Masood the international terrorism. So,
no, that's absolutely right. The world's response to Kashmir has definitely not been what Pakistan has hoped for. It's a victory for India. Yeah. Sushant wants to come in with a point. Sushant, I saw you nodding your head there.
Absolutely.
I saw you nodding your head there. Is it a matter of duty on 700 Harleys? I mean, if it was so easy, we would have done it by now, I assume.
No, we should have done it, but we also have a bureaucracy which is so bullheaded that it's not funny. But I disagree with the previous speaker when he, look, we don't need the 5th generation fighter, we can't afford it. We can't afford 135, I don't know what the price is, but it's some obscene price for the FGFA, number one. Number two, we don't need it also because our strategic challenges right now do not behove of requiring a 5th generation fighter right now. I think even if we have a good 4.5 Gen, I think that's pretty good for us, number one. Number two. Number three, please let's not make any mistake about it. Cutting edge defense technologies are not given by anybody to anybody else. You either build them or you steal them, and we do neither. So clearly we are not going to get cutting edge technologies. We can buy some of them, but we can't afford them. So I think let's be realistic about what we can get from them and what we can't. Having said that, yes, we need to have very good relations with the Americans, and I think Manoj has touched upon probably what is the most important opportunity which is coming our way, which we might already be missing out because of our bullheadedness and because of our bureaucratic structures, which is that many American and Western companies are getting out of China fast. Now, clearly you can and we need to desperately attract those companies into India. And as a colleague of mine has today written that Modi needs to do the Sanand model when he shifted, the production line of the Tata Nano from West Bengal to Gujarat and did it within 100 hours. So we need something like that to attract those companies.
I'm not going to crow about it, but said colleague first to put that thought across on the India development debate.
The Americans want a much more open trading regime.
Yes. Yeah, so said colleague did put that thought across first on the India development debate. We had that conversation where that point was made. So is there an advantage between the US-China war that India is not being able to take, that other Southeast Asian countries are seeming to mop up? We'll come back on more on that. Another perspective on, the Kashmir comments today. Is it a major diplomatic victory as we're seeing it here in India? Speaking to me after the break, and a very short one, will be Michael Kugelman, Deputy Director at the Asia Program and Senior Associate for South Asia. Michael will join us after this very short break. I'm coming right back, but before I go into the break, I just want to play out that sound bite of how President Trump responded when asked if he still wants to mediate in Kashmir.
Mr. President, is that offer still on the table?
I'm here. I have a very good relationship with both gentlemen, and I'm here. If for any reason, but I think they can do it themselves very well. They've been doing it for a long time.
Welcome back. You're watching the India development debate and we're talking about that almost impromptu press conference we saw earlier today in France with Prime Minister Modi and US President Donald Trump. Remember, India was a special invitee by the French President to this event. Let me go across to Kaval Sibal, and we've been discussing a variety of angles here to the story. But Mr. Sibal, on the basic question of trade, there have been a few inputs that have come in here, a few different and contrarian points of view. Where do you stand on the debate we've been hearing so far?
Well, we have always had difficult problems with the United States on the trade issue. It's nothing new. We've had very difficult relations. I don't know if you can hear me. Because
yes, I can, absolutely.
Now, we've always had very difficult relations with the USTR from the time that I was in Washington. They have been acting against us, investigating us under Section 301. During Obama's presidency, the US Congress asked the US International Chamber of Commerce to investigate India's trade, investment and IPR policies and submit a report in 1 or 2 years' time. Currently, we have very difficult relations with the USTR, Mr. Lighthizer, but the Americans have certain demands which are pushed by domestic lobbies, principally the medical device lobby and the IT lobby, especially Apple. And they have been summoning us to respond to their demands immediately, and in fact threatening us that if we did not move fast enough, they might be compelled to institute a Section 301 investigation into Indian unfair trade practices, which can of course become very problematic. But you must remember one thing. Our trade with the United States was only 5 billion in 1991.
Right.
Today, the total trade in goods and services is 142 billion. So there is a huge increase, and this has happened despite so-called unfair trade practices by India. And now the United States has become the 4th largest exporter of oil and gas to India, and this is going to grow. There are so many other areas in which our growing economy will give tremendous opportunities to the United States. And if the Prime Minister's objective of reaching a $5 trillion economy by 2025 it will get achieved, then you can see how much participation there can be of American industry and investors into India. But unfortunately, the American system is such that there is no strategic view of economic ties, but it is pushed by individual lobbies, whether on the pharmaceutical side or the medical side or some other side, and that becomes a governmental issue on the part of the United States, and they start pressing us to yield on these issues. With regard to one or two other things I want to mention, that
Yes.
on our side, Mr. Piyush Goyal is now waiting for a signal from his counterpart, the USTR, not his counterpart, the USTR, to go to Washington. And he is very confident that in one long meeting, maybe a couple of hours, all the outstanding issues can be settled. And he's also very confident that the data localization issues are not problematic. Essentially, these are related to MasterCard and Visa,
Right.
but that also can be sorted out in consultation with the Reserve Bank of India. So on our side, there is clarity that the issues are not difficult, they are exaggerated, and unnecessary perception is being given that India is being difficult. But all that we need is now a renewed dialogue at the USTR level. But unfortunately, the USTR is very busy with the China issue and the Canadian issue and the Mexican issue.
Actually,
and of course,
yes.
he's personally a bit feeling rebuffed
Which actually,
because of
yes.
the fact that he was not able to get satisfaction from our side in the last year or so.
Yeah, exactly, Mr. Sibal, and you've actually brought me to the third point, which I was keen to discuss on the show, which is, all of this is fine, India-US trade, our, diplomatic victory on Kashmir. The big one is US and China getting along, which has impact for all of us and the world. But before I get to that, and I'm going to come to Sanjay on that, I want to welcome Michael Kugelman on the show. He was able to join us a little later. But Michael, I'm keen to get your perspective on, how you see the Trump-Modi meet today. All of us here see it, of course, as a big diplomatic victory because Trump has definitely toned down his mediation claims. Modi made it very clear that this was bilateral, and he actually said, he said it in Hindi, translated to, we don't want to trouble any other country with mediating between us. Do you think that we've successfully managed to put our point across? I was keen to know what you think.
No, I think the outcome of this most recent Trump-Modi meeting was about as positive and good as one could expect from India's perspective, and certainly from the U.S. perspective as well. It's something that Donald Trump really struggles to get along with even America's closest partners, and yet, there have now been several direct encounters and meetings between Trump and Modi, and there's never been a bad meeting. They've always gone well, including this one. We saw the brief exchange in which the body language was very positive, the optics were very strong. And indeed, on the Kashmir issue, yes. I mean, the fact that Trump basically said that this is an issue to be worked out between India and Pakistan, I mean, clearly that would appear to be a net positive for India. Certainly, I guess, ideally, the word Kashmir wouldn't even come up at all. But the fact that it did in this context, I think, is a good thing, and it certainly represents, what Trump said today certainly represents a significant climb down from what he was saying as he was sitting next to Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan in Washington a few weeks ago. So I think that's the real takeaway for me, that sure, it was brief, it was just a brief exchange, but I think it went quite well for both sides, and it was the outcome that both sides would want. Though, of course, there are big challenges for this relationship now, particularly on the trade side, as was discussed before. And I do think that, theoretically there should be an opportunity for the U.S. and India because of the deep trade tensions between the U.S. and China. And yet you have these very real commercial tensions on the U.S.-India side as well, which are not going to go away, particularly with President Trump and his politics, particularly with the U.S. presidential election coming up next year. He's not going to relent on these protectionist policies, which affect U.S.-India relations deleteriously.
Okay, some interesting perspective there. Sanjay, let me come to you. All throughout the show, I've heard various times, various speakers say that the US-China trade war is a potential for India. It's an opportunity for India. Why have we not seen any of those gains yet then? And do you see that as the biggest sort of red flag which comes out of this multilateral meet going on in France right now, even though there were conciliatory tones in Trump's latest tweets vis-a-vis China?
I think we need to keep some important facts in mind here. One, the US-China trade deficit. I mean, the US trade deficit with China is almost $300 billion, whereas US trade deficit with India is around $25 billion, around that. So for United States, US-China trade conflict that is evolving is of much more importance than the trade conflict it has with India. That is at the moment. But given the fact that they are in conflict with China, what is United States doing? United States is pushing other countries to open up their market so that it can find some legroom or adjust to the ongoing trade war with United States, with the China. So therefore, we have a challenge in the short run coming from US-China trade war, which is that United States will ask in the coming years or in coming months to open up our market more and more so that they can offset their losses that they are having with because of the trade war with China. On the positives, what we may see is that when the American companies or other companies, European companies, today see that long-term investments in China are going to be a potential political risk, even if you have a trade agreement between United States and China, because it is going to be a long acrimonious settlement, and every day there will be some allegations or the other that the spirit of the agreement is not being upheld. So therefore, there will be a lot of companies that will be looking to move out of China, or at least
but are they looking to move into India? Is my question. Yes, sir. But are they looking to move into India? I saw Ambassador Vishnu Prakash. Yes, I saw Ambassador Vishnu Prakash put his hand up. We're in the last few minutes, so I need you to indicate if you want to come in with a point and be brief with it. Okay, Sanjay, I will allow you to finish that sentence. I don't want to be rude.
If I may complete.
Yes, I'll allow you to finish that sentence.
I mean, if you see United Nations Trade report recently pointed out that various countries such as Vietnam, Philippines and India may benefit, but a lot will depend on ease of doing business and state-center coordination in facilitating very quick processes to attract this investment.
Okay, yes, Ambassador Prakash.
Tamanna, it has become fashionable, I am afraid to say, that if there is distress in trade between the US and China, that brings an opportunity to India, and we can plug the global supply gap, or we can step into the supply chain. It's easier said than done. I agree with Sanjay that the basic issue is that while there is a desire, we can be the next China, we can be the next factory, but we need to undertake the biggest reforms, that's the land and labor reforms. And the fact also remains that we have a rather huge trade deficit, and that is because our manufacturing base is narrow. So we have to get our act right, and unless we get our act right, I think it's premature to rejoice about the friction in trade between the US and China. And lastly, we have yet not seen we have not heard the last word. We don't know which way it will eventually, the wind will blow.
Yeah, no, and we also have to, weigh, will the benefits of any, trade coming our way or us filling in any gaps actually outweigh the global kind of environment which will be hampered by this war between US and China. Ajay Dua. And then Sushant Sareen. I have the last few minutes, so brief please, gentlemen, I request you. Yes, Mr. Dua.
I think we must realize that the Sino-US trade war is actually reducing the volume of international trade. So in order to get a slice of it, and a greater slice of it than before, we need to be far more competitive in the international arena than we are currently. We have already seen that China has made certain concessions, but the concessions to us in terms of duty, etc., are on products like soya, which is an agriculture product. They slashed the duty specifically for import of soya from India, because they have imposed a higher duty on imports from the United States of soya, which is a major source of supply of food supply for their cattle. We need to get into, if we want to increase or get a benefit of it, get into large scale manufacture of certain number of items in order to be able to get into the supply chain of China, which has got disrupted because of duties being levied by either side, and United States was sending whole lot of intermediate products for the final products which China then exported back to the US. Having levied duties, that supply chain has got disrupted. But as has been said, I would totally agree that India has to pick and choose where the opportunities are and then go whole hog.
But this has been going on for over a year, so it's time we picked and chose.
For it.
Yes, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I'm going to go to Sushant very quickly and then end with Michael. Yes, Sushant.
Yes.
Look, here's the bottom line. Whether it is on strategic issues in Kashmir, you have to fix it internally. Whether it is economic issues, you have to fix it internally. Now, if you are going to be in this business of pick and choose, I'm afraid you've lost the game. You cannot be in this game of pick and choose. You have to have a good liberal policy framework and to pull out all stops to attract whatever investment wants to come into your country. But if you are going to start fixing the price of soap so that people can wash their hands, or fix the price of sanitary napkins because you want to reach out to a constituency, you've lost the plot.
Yeah,
You do that if you want to do it at one level, let the government dispense it, but you please let the market operate on market principles. If you are going to interfere in everything because some babu sitting somewhere knows how the economy has to function, even though he hasn't earned a single day, worked for a single day, ever handled a single business, only destroyed public sector units, then I'm afraid you've lost the plot. So you really need serious reforms if you want to get the economic activity going.
I mean, that's
otherwise just forget about it.
If you're going to first do our reforms, then figure out supply chain management. I mean, we're talking about taking, some advantage of a situation going on right now. Very, very quick last word, Michael.
Yes, exactly.
Well, I mean, I think that the broader trend lines for this relationship, the U.S.-India relationship now, despite all that we've been hearing about the issues with Kashmir and all that, they remain quite positive. And I think that the big focus, particularly here in Washington, is on the trade concerns. But I think one thing that's telling and indicative of a relationship that on the whole is quite healthy is that despite all these problems, you continue to have fairly sustained, high-level discussions and exchanges between Indian and U.S. officials to try to work out these trade issues. So I think that's one positive thing to look at when you're trying to gauge the future of the relationship given the commercial tensions.
Right. I will have to wrap it here. And I want to thank all of you for joining us on this show today. Just want to say before we go that a lot of things have been discussed at the G7. We've talked about a lot of them that impact India. But remember one important thing, that this was also about climate change, something which is beyond trade, beyond bilateral issues, but impacts all of us. Let's hope there is a consensus on that big issue as well. Thank you for joining us.